We've all heard of the story where Jesus walks on water, but have you ever noticed that this is the exact same sea that the herd of pigs drowned in after he cast out demons? Or have you ever noticed how this is the same sea that he's calmed once before? See, small details just like this are going to reveal the deeper message underneath this very famous story. It's not just about walking on water. It's actually about treading on the kingdom of darkness. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 8 amazing insights that the Holy Spirit has showed me about this passage, and I can't wait to show you. Let's jump into Matthew chapter 14. Hey, welcome to Above Reproach Ministries. I'm Jason Camacho. If you do not know me, welcome to the channel. Hey, if you're wanting to learn how to read and study the Bible and understand God's Word, this is the channel for you. We're in Matthew 14, but a few things before we get started. If this video blesses you, like and subscribe. Watch the rest of our Matthew series if you haven't. Watch our daily devotional videos that complement these. And then every week, check the homepage of our website for our weekly Bible reading plan and reflection questions that correspond to these teaching videos. And then every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, join us on our Discord server for our group study discussion in the scriptures. All right. So starting in verse 22, immediately after Jesus fed the 5,000 or the 20,000, he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went on a mountain, up on the mountain by himself to pray. And when evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, and the wind was against them. We have seen this before. And in the 4th watch of the night, he came to them, this time a bit differently. Not in the boat sleeping. They have to go to him and wake him up. No, he comes to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them. Now you and I go, what an irrational fear. We'll get to that. Saying, "Hey, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. I'm unarmed." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." What a fascinating request. And he said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came to Jesus. But as soon as he saw the wind, Peter got afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand, took hold of him. Remember in the previous story, chapter 8, Jesus calming the storm, they come to him, "We are perishing, we are drowning, we're sinking. Save us." And Jesus responds, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind stopped. This time Jesus doesn't say anything, just his presence in the boat shuts it all down. And those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Now here's the first observation I want to make. There's 8 of them. Outside the boat is the first observation. See, Jesus sent them away after they ate. If you remember, the disciples previously told Jesus, "Hey, why don't you tell the crowds to go home so they can eat?" But Jesus reversed that order. And the last time we saw a storm story in chapter 8, Jesus got in the boat with his disciples. This time he's not there. And this is very similar to how we saw Jesus earlier. He made the crowd sit on the grass in verse 19. Just the authority of Jesus should be on our minds. In the verse 23, after he dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. And so he's on a high place to pray alone. And twice this verse is going to tell us that he's alone. He's by himself, and he's there all alone. Kind of like the testing in the wilderness in chapter 4. But the fact that he's alone there with the Father is emphasized. Likely, this is to process and mourn, remember, the death of John the Baptist. John just died. He was trying to get away to pray and be alone in a desolate place. The crowds find him, busy, tiring day, and finally, he has some time to process and mourn and pray and get with the Father. Here's the second observation, is the high mountains. We're going to see Jesus not just here on a mountain praying, right? But later on in chapter 17, he's going to go up the Mount of Transfiguration. And he's going to be left alone after Moses and Elijah show up. They're going to disappear. And all that's going to be left is Jesus. And in that moment, the Father's actually validating Jesus and saying, this is my beloved Son. And the Father there is affirming the Son's identity. In this context of the walking on water scene, we're going to see that the disciples end up seeing Jesus is the Son of God. And weirdly enough, Moses and Elijah, as I referenced a bit ago, they are two characters who sought the Lord in incredibly distressing and difficult situations on a high mountain. Moses and Elijah both find themselves at the top of Mount Sinai. So we should be thinking about those stories. They should be on our mind as we're reading Jesus going up the mountain to pray, his disciples struggling. Verse 24, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, the winds against them. We have two contrasting scenes, right? On one side, we have the peaceful, solitary setting of Jesus praying. And you might say, well, there's some mourning. He's grieving, he's processing. Sure, but he's alone and he's with the Father. And then that scene is contrasted with this chaotic environment where the disciples are struggling to get to the other side. And you might say that both are struggling. Jesus is struggling in prayer, kind of with the Garden of Gethsemane in view, while the others are struggling physically to stay alive. Right? One is more of a spiritual struggle. The other one is a physical struggle. One is prayer. The other one is labor. Here's the third observation, is the praying alone. Right here. He went by himself to pray. He needed to be alone. This is not the last time that we're going to see Jesus praying alone in a garden kind of mountain scene while his disciples are in a kind of storm themselves. Remember, in the Garden of Gethsemane, while they're inwardly going through this emotional distress and this kind of storm, processing all the bad news they just received from Jesus. I'm going away. They're confused. They're disoriented. They're swirling. They're frustrated. What is going on? In the same way Jesus is having to process some difficult news. Well, in that setting, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is on his own, praying to the Father, while his three boys fall asleep. And we're told at what time of the night Jesus decides to get up and start walking towards his boys. You might have a footnote in your Bible that says 3 a.m., which that's a long time to pray. If he started praying when evening came, that's a good long time to spend in prayer with God. But if he finds himself on the mountain again at evening time, how long have they been struggling? The question we have is, well, why, Jesus, did you choose to wait this long to get involved and help your struggling disciples? Like, who knows how long they've been struggling and getting nowhere? Like, are they going backwards? Are they making a little bit of headway and then getting pushed back, 2 steps forward, 9 back? Why let them struggle for so long? It's a very similar question we ask with the death of Lazarus, Mary and Martha's brother, in John chapter 11. When Jesus doesn't come, he lets them sit, he lets him die. We go, why? Well, verse 25 is the fourth observation. He's going to walk on water. This is setting up this scene. This whole thing is one big setup. In a good way. This is how God is said to have rescued his people from the Egyptian armies. I want to take you to a couple Old Testament passages. You might not know the concept of God walking on water. That attribute, that characteristic of being able to walk on water is unique and exclusive to God alone. Now, God can take people through dry land, through water. There's lots of times where God brings people through water. No one in the Old Testament walks on water. In Psalm 77, recalling the Exodus story, when the Israelites are about to walk across the Red Sea, this is how the psalmist poetically recalls that event. When the waters saw you, God, they were afraid. And it's like, hey, the disciples are afraid here. Yeah, they're afraid of the wrong thing at first. They're afraid of the storm and physical death. They should be afraid of the one that the waters are afraid of. They trembled, the deep. Remember the deep in Genesis chapter 1? The Spirit hovering over the deep. waters. The clouds poured out water. The skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea. Interesting. His way, that he allows people to follow him in, but it's his. Your path that he carved out for himself and those who had faith in him. They got to pass through the great waters. And yet your footprints, this is interesting, your footprints, Hebrew is unknown, were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. So it's as though God is the real shepherd, leading Israel like a flock through the dry land that he cleared for them. But he's the one walking through the sea and the great waters, making a way for them on dry land. It's as though because God can walk on the waters, he can turn the waters into dry land for his people. But Jesus doesn't do that. The waters don't separate to create land for him. The waters actually become as dry land for him to walk on. In Job 9:8, we're told, who commands the sun and it doesn't rise? Who seals up the stars? That kind of cosmic power. Who alone stretches out the heavens and trampled the waves of the sea? And you're supposed to go, it sounds like God is the only one whose way and path is on and through the waters. And he allows people to go through on dry land because he paved the way for them. Maybe you didn't know this, but we create all of these free resources to supplement your faith and to strengthen Christian communities around the world. If you're looking for biblical content to use for discussion in your groups, churches, or one-on-one discipleship, consider using my book Fruitful or any of our different Bible series playlists, or track with us through our current study. Maybe even consider starting an ARM discussion group, which we actually have a weekly men's Bible study here in Spartanburg, South Carolina, if you live nearby to join. And we also have a deeper Bible study discussion every week on our Discord server. Check the Discord event schedule for the time and day. You can find all this info on AboveReproachMinistry.com, as well as on our weekly email. So join the email list to stay updated every single week, and let's get back to the video. In verse 26, the disciples see Jesus walking on the sea, and they're terrified. And they say, it's a ghost. And they cried out in fear. The disciples have already responded like this once before. Remember in the previous storm of chapter 8, when Jesus calmed the raging sea and they were afraid and stood back in awe. They legitimately, in this passage, believe they're seeing some kind of apparition or spiritual being in this situation. And you and I go, what an unrealistic fear. Pause. If you watch the previous study on the storm in the Sea of Galilee and how the deep waters and the abyss were viewed, go watch that. But if we consider how the Jewish understanding of the sea is different than we view it, it's viewed as the great abyss where unclean spirits come from and are sent into. This fear would make sense. Because what they're doing is assigning a supernatural, spiritual dimension to what they're seeing, because they know the deep waters of the sea are almost like an entry into the underworld. So there's a lot of spiritual, I won't say juice, that's weird, but a lot of spiritual stuff going on. Immediately Jesus said, whoa, 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 whoa. Take heart, it is I, don't be afraid. And Peter said, Lord, if it's actually you, command me to come to you on the water. This statement right here is similar to what Satan said in Matthew 4. Not that I'm equating Peter and Satan in this specific situation, but in Matthew 4, remember Jesus is being tempted by the tempter, the devil, and the devil says, if you are the Son of God. Now that was different. The devil was testing and tempting Jesus by questioning and doubting his identity. Peter just wants to know if it's actually him. He's not doubting the identity of Jesus. He just wants to know it actually is him. There's a different heart attitude and posture, a different purpose behind Peter's question. He wants assurance, So we might ask, why is this the proof in Peter's mind? If this is Jesus, he'd tell me to come walk on water with him. We also might want to ask, why does Peter even want to come to Jesus at all? Why not just stay in the boat with everybody else? Is this conviction or understanding based on the Old Testament possibly? Verse 29, and Jesus says, come on over, buddy. So Peter got out of the boat, walked on water, came to Jesus. Had to be the coolest moment up to that point in Peter's life. Here's the fifth observation, is this under his feet theme. This is the invitation we have in Matthew 11:28, okay? Coincidentally, this is Matthew 14:28, but Matthew 11:28. Jesus says, hey, what? Come to me, all who labor, all who are heavy laden, I will give you rest. What is it that the disciples are lacking in this storm? Peace, which can be equated with rest, which is exactly what Jesus demonstrated in the previous storm. He was at rest. He's offering people, by faith, to come and enter into that reality and condition of being. And now he's saying, hey, Peter, come. So Peter does. Peter comes to him. Jesus is inviting people to come, all those who are weary and heavy laden. Hey, come and rise above what once overtook you. Come and stand with Jesus through faith in him. All authority is his. Death, sin, and the devil through his cross are under his feet. And you're invited through faith to stand with him and tread the enemy. That's why Romans 16 says the God of peace, weirdly enough, peace and rest are in view there. The God of peace will soon crush Satan under y'all's feet. And Paul's talking to the church in Rome. But it's Jesus doing the crushing. We are in Jesus, but he lets us be a part of that victory. His victory is given to us. We benefit from it. So, great scene. People cheer it, I'm sure. But when he saw the wind, strong wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. This is the exact cry in 8:25. Chapter 8, verse 25. Storm breaks in. Disciples go, we got to wake up Jesus. Lord, save us. We're perishing. But at least the disciples know who to go to in times of fear and danger. Here's the sixth observation, is the exposing of doubt. Jesus immediately reaches out his hand, took hold of him and said, hey, just so we're clear, you had little faith. And I want to ask you, why did you doubt? This is a teaching lesson. This is an opportunity for Peter to learn. There's a lesson to be learned in this storm, not just on the other side of it in hindsight. And as Jesus saves Peter from actual death and brings Peter out of a form of death, he's in the process of sinking. Jesus, like Jonah, right? Jesus needs to address Peter's doubt right then and there. It's like, you can't have this conversation after. Before they even get into the boat, he's having this conversation. And it's very similar to how, remember Jesus, there's a woman with an issue of blood for 12 years. She reaches out, grabs the garment, and Jesus goes, pause. Who touched me? And the woman comes out sheepishly, and Jesus goes, hey, daughter, your faith has made you well. He needs her to know she's truly healed. The physical issue was what she was concerned with, kind of like Peter is here. He's afraid of physically dying, rightfully so. But Jesus, he addresses the invisible issue underneath it all. There's a spiritual dimension to this. This whole situation, I think, is on the mind of James as he's writing James 1, 6 through 8. Hey, when you're in the middle of your own storm, right, suffering, right here, count it all joy when you meet trials and you're being tested. Hey, when you're in the time of testing and you're in your own kind of storm, if you lack wisdom, just ask God, because he gives generously to all. And kind of like Peter, Jesus extends the invitation in the hand. Hey, come on out here, buddy. And it'll be given to him. But let him ask in faith. I think this is on Peter's mind as he's seeing Jesus on the storm. You know, Matthew chapter 7, he did tell us in the Sermon on the Mount to ask and to seek and to knock. Well, I'm going to ask, hey, if that's you, tell me to come to you. And Jesus goes, Yeah. And James goes, let him ask in faith, no doubting. The one who doubts, what was Peter doing? He's doubting. Is like a wave of the sea. What's he looking at? The wind and the waves, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not suppose he'll receive anything from the Lord. He's double-minded. He's unstable in all his ways. So it does say Peter saw the wind. We often say he saw the waves. No, he's actually sinking, but the wind is causing him fear. And we see all these same elements: fear, doubt in James chapter 1, suffering and testing, wind, waves, belief, faith, calling out to God for help, asking for wisdom in that context. So go study that out on your own. That'll be part of your homework. Verse 32, when they got into the boat, the wind stopped. And I was like, well, Jesus, last time you just calmed it with a word and said, hush, enough. Why didn't you do that on your way to us? Why didn't you do that the minute we saw you? Why didn't you do that as soon as Peter stepped out? Why did you wait to calm the storm until you got in the boat? Now, it doesn't say he calmed the storm, but we can assume, I think, that Jesus is the one, if not the Father, through the Son's, activity. But here's the seventh observation: is peace in the storm. In the previous storm of chapter 8, Jesus was at peace in the boat. Remember, he's sleeping in the middle of the storm like Jonah. He's with his disciples. But now this is a different experience. Jesus is at peace walking on the waters towards his disciples. There are two different images of peace. One is restful ease, unaffected by the storm, sleeping. The other one is peacefully, yet actively moving towards his people in the storm. And we hold these two stories side by side and we go, hey, this seems to let us know there are at least two different ways God might handle our storms and be present with us in difficulties. Sometimes it's the last minute. Sometimes it's, come on out here with me. Sometimes it's, he's here already. Sometimes it's, he's coming towards us, or at least we become aware. What's interesting is that we see a progression in the disciples in verse 33. As soon as the storm stops, again, the emphasis is on the wind. Right here it's talking about the wind and the waves are against them, but the emphasis on the wind is blowing against them. Peter sees the wind. Jesus calmed the wind, and then they go, you are the Son of God. Huh. And I think there's a progression here. In the last storm, they were left wondering, curious, well, who is this? Who the wind and the waves even listen to his voice. Now they're at the point where they know, this is the Son of God. So we should be asking, well, why was this the convincing evidence for them? Kind of like for Peter, why was Jesus inviting him on the water the convincing proof that that's actually Jesus? What does this mean for them? When they say Son of God, what is the biblical basis for that term and that reasoning? You've heard of workout programs that help you achieve your physical fitness goals, but have you ever heard of a program that helps you achieve your Bible study goals? Think of it like this. In the same way that you target specific muscle groups and become capable of lifting more weight, there are actually specific Bible study skills that you can target and develop for greater depth and biblical comprehension. That's exactly why I created our 12-week Bible Workouts program, where you'll start from ground zero to develop 7 key Bible study skills that are crucial for proper Bible study. And to celebrate the release of this new program on November 10th, we're having a free 7-day Bible challenge throughout the entire month of November. In this challenge, you'll take a brief look at these 7 Bible study skills. If you need some fresh fire and motivation for your own personal quiet time, this is your chance to get back on track. Every day you'll be sent a unique hand-picked scripture and a specific Bible workout that will help you develop a solid foundation for deeper Bible study. This will train you to read the Bible the way that it's intended to be. And whether you're a new believer or a longtime Christian, this challenge is going to bless you. Sign up for the challenge on the homepage of our website or click the link in the description of this video, and I'll see you in that challenge. All right, let's get back to the video. Here's the last observation, is the Son of God. So far, we've seen the demons refer to Jesus as the Son of God. We've seen the devil question Jesus and say, if you're the Son of God. And now we have the disciples finally catching on and going, hey, well, it's the Son of God, isn't it? This doesn't mean they fully understand the nature of his mission. In chapter 16, we're going to see Peter. He's going to say, "You're the Christ." And Jesus goes, "My Father revealed that to you, buddy." But then Peter turns around and rebukes Jesus, saying, "You'll never go to the cross." So clearly there's a lot of misunderstanding. But it's one thing to have Jesus. It's one thing for Jesus to have authority to command the seas and the wind, right, in chapter 8. It's another thing for Jesus to demonstrate such control and sovereign power that he's able to turn the waves into his transportation system. Like, he literally turns the water into a kind of dry ground to walk on. Now the waves aren't something to be afraid of. The water is something to tame and actually move Jesus into where the Father has him. So what should have drowned Jesus, physically speaking, becomes a transportation system, works in the will of the Father. And I think there's a spiritual message underneath that for us. But this theme of having things under the feet of God's chosen one, all throughout the Bible, man. I just want you to consider all the passages that come to mind for you where you think of, hey, we have authority over something, or having things underneath our feet, like Romans 16 I quoted a bit ago. Luke 10:19 should come to mind for you. Jesus sends his disciples out with authority, and they go, "Even the demons were subject to us." He's going, "Cool. I've given you authority to tread on serpents." Tread on, like you stand above, stomp with the feet. Right, back to Genesis 3. I've given you authority to tread on serpents, scorpions, all the power of the enemy. Nothing will hurt you. Right? Paul demonstrates this when a snake bites him. Weirdly enough, this passage in Luke right here, talking about the authority Jesus gives to his disciples, it's connected to the section I referenced earlier in Matthew 11:28. "Come to me, all who are weary, I'll give you rest." This is that same discourse, except Luke leaves out certain statements that are part of that discourse. Whether this is a different situation where Jesus gives a similar message, right? He was an itinerant preacher, probably recycled many messages, right? Depending on the situation and audience, probably said a lot of the same things. But weirdly enough, in Luke's gospel, this section on the authority to tread on serpents is connected to receiving the rest of Jesus and coming to him in faith. So the two ideas are combined in Luke's account. Two ideas that we should be paying attention to: rest and authority over the enemy. This whole story of Jesus walking on water, while there's much more for me to comment on, it's demonstrating the divine creative power of Jesus. He doesn't just command the waters like Moses, right? It'd be cool to be like, "Split." Oh, right? Joshua, the priest standing in the Jordan. Oh, no, Jesus walks on water and then brings people with him. He doesn't just have enough authority for himself. He has an overflowing, abundant amount of authority for any to come and receive and benefit from. I think that's a theological point in this story. Jesus is doing what only God can do. Now, hey, if you want a deeper look at this story, like I've done a long teaching on this story in John's Gospel, we look at how this moment links back to the original creation story of Genesis 1. We look at how this biblical concept of chaos and disorder and is throughout the Bible, and how God actually tames Leviathan, the sea dragon. We look at the biblical pattern of God bringing things and people through the waters of death and chaos. We look at the parallels to the Exodus crossing at the Red Sea in Exodus 14. So if I remember, I'm going to link that video right here or in the description of this video. Either way, it should be there. If not, comment letting me know, hey, you forgot. But maybe you didn't know this. We have a new channel. It's called Different Bible Study. So we've actually moved our Thursday videos over to that channel. You might notice, hey, you don't do 3 videos on this channel anymore. You used to do Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and now there's just Monday and Wednesday. Well, go subscribe to that channel. Hit the notifications bell so you don't miss those teachings. But we've started a study in Genesis. We're going all the way back to the beginning. So every Thursday, there will be a new teaching on Genesis on that new channel, and it will complement what we're doing here. It's all connected, okay? For now, every week on this channel, you'll find 2 videos, one on Monday, one on Wednesday, and we'll go through Matthew, right? But on Thursday, that Genesis teaching is moved to the new channel. It's called Different Bible Study. You can find the link in the description of this video. Make sure you head over there. You can find the link in the description. And there's more I'm going to share in a follow-up teaching on the exclusive video section of our website for monthly supporters, where we're going to process this wisdom, reflect on it, share some application. If you're a monthly supporter, go check that out. My way of saying thank you. If you're not a monthly supporter, you can become one today and help us teach people how to read the Bible so they can live and teach it for themselves. And if you'd rather just skip that teaching, download the sermon notes as a monthly supporter. You have access to all my sermon notes as well. Okay? In the very next story, Jesus will heal many people in the land of Gennesaret. And then he's going to get himself into trouble with the Pharisees and scribes that come from Jerusalem. And he's about to expose their hypocritical religion in front of everyone. But we need to consider how that confrontation flows out of these two miraculous miracles. Jesus walking on water and Jesus feeding the 5,000. Okay? And we'll get to that in the next video. But in the meantime, follow our reading plan, join our Thursday nights for a follow-up group discussion, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, if you're not a monthly supporter yet of this ministry, here's why you'll want to become one today. You get access to exclusive teachings every week. Right now, I'm going through Genesis, looking at the Hebrew and drawing out deeper insights. You'll get access to all of my biblical parallel worksheets. And there are other benefits for higher tiers, like unlimited access to all of my sermon notes, free access to paid Bible courses, and even early access to weekly Bible teachings. So go check that out on the website, and thank you for supporting this ministry to help us teach people how to read the Bible so they can live and teach it for themselves. I'll see you in the next video.